The clerk's fist connected with the boy's jaw before anyone could stop him. Blood sprayed across the white tile floor as the 16-year-old crumpled his sister's scream, cutting through the grocery store like a siren. "That's what you get, you little rat." The clerk grabbed a handful of the kid's hair, yanking his head back, ready to hit him again. That's when Clare Ashford's hand caught his wrist mid-swing. The ER nurse didn't say a word, just stared him down with eyes that had seen worse than him. She had no clue that stopping this one violent assault would put federal agents on her doorstep within hours, hunting for secrets that could burn Washington to the ground. Subscribe now, drop your city in the comments, and watch until the end. The clerk's hand was still wrapped around the boy's jacket when Clare reached them. She didn't touch anyone, didn't escalate, just stood there with her palms open at her sides. "Let him go." Her voice was steady, the kind of steady that came from 12-hour shifts in an emergency room where staying calm meant the difference between life and death. The clerk's eyes snapped to her, wild and furious. "Mind your business, lady. These kids were stealing." "Were they?" Claire's gaze shifted to the boy, then to his sister, still on the floor. "Did you see them steal something?" "I don't need to see it. I know their type." The words hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. A few other customers had stopped phones already out recording. Clare felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she got when a trauma patient was coding, and she had seconds to decide. "Let him go." She repeated it slower this time, each word deliberate. The clerk released the boy with a shove that sent him stumbling into Clare. She caught him, her hands automatically checking him over the way she'd done with countless patients. No visible injuries, but his whole body was shaking. "You okay?" she asked quietly. The boy nodded, unable to speak. His sister scrambled to her feet, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," the girl whispered. "We didn't take anything. I swear we didn't." "I know." Clare believed her. She'd seen enough liars in the ER to recognize truth. The clerk's face had gone from red to purple. "You're all the same protecting these little criminals. I'm calling the cops." "Go ahead," Clare said. She meant it. Let the police sort this out. She'd give a statement, these kids would be cleared, and she'd go home to her quiet apartment and her quiet life. Except that's not what happened. The police arrived in 4 minutes. 2 officers, both with that wary look cops get when they walk into a situation already being filmed. Clare recognized one of them, Officer Mendoza from the ER. He'd brought in a domestic violence victim 3 weeks ago. "Mendoza," she nodded. He didn't nod back. His eyes skated past her like she was a stranger. That should have been her first clue. "This woman assaulted me," the clerk announced, pointing at Clare. "She grabbed me when I was trying to stop these thieves." Claire's eyebrows shot up. "That's not what happened." "I've got witnesses," the clerk continued, gesturing vaguely at the other employees behind the counter. 2 of them nodded eagerly. "There are videos," Clare said, keeping her voice level. "Everyone here recorded it." "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step outside with me," Mendoza said. His partner, a younger officer named Chen, according to his badge, had already moved to position himself on her other side. "I didn't do anything wrong. I stopped him from hurting these kids. We can discuss this outside." Mendoza's hand moved toward his belt, not quite touching his weapon, but close enough. Claire's pulse kicked up, but she forced herself to breathe. She'd been in tense situations before. This would get cleared up. It had to. "Fine," she turned to the teenagers. "Stay here. Tell them what really happened." The girl grabbed Claire's hand. "Please don't leave us." "I'll be right back." Clare squeezed her fingers once, then let go and walked toward the door. Mendoza and Chen flanked her like she was a suspect, not a witness. Outside, the late afternoon sun was blinding. Clare shielded her eyes, trying to orient herself. The parking lot was half full, normal people doing normal things, loading groceries into cars, pushing carts. "Turn around and put your hands on the car." Mendoza's voice had changed harder now. "Official." "What? Why? Do it." Something cold slithered through Claire's stomach. "Am I under arrest?" "Turn around." She did, slowly placing her palms flat on the hood of the patrol car. The metal was hot from the sun. Chen pulled her right hand back, then her left, and she felt the handcuffs click into place. "This is insane," Clare said. "I'm a nurse. I was protecting those kids from assault. There's video." "You have the right to remain silent." Mendoza started the Miranda rights, and Claire's brain stuttered, trying to catch up. "I know my rights. I want to know what I'm being charged with. Assault on a store employee. Interference with a theft investigation. That's garbage, and you know it. Mendoza, you've seen me at the hospital. You know I'm not. Get in the car. They put her in the back seat. Claire had never been in a police car before, not like this. The plastic seat was cracked and uncomfortable, and there was a smell like vomit and disinfectant. Through the window, she could see the teenagers being escorted out by another officer who'd arrived. The girl was crying again. The drive to the station took 11 minutes. Claire counted every one. She tried to think logically to make sense of this. Someone had made a complaint, probably the clerk, and the officers were obligated to investigate. They'd take her statement, review the videos, and this would be over. Except when they got to the station, things got stranger. They didn't take her to a normal holding area. Instead, Mendoza and Chen walked her through the building to a hallway she'd never seen before, one that required a key card to access. The walls were blank, institutional gray. No windows. "Where are we going?" Claire asked. No answer. They stopped at a door marked only with a number 7. Mendoza opened it and gestured for her to enter. The room inside was small and cold, with a metal table bolted to the floor and 2 chairs on either side. A camera in the corner, its red light blinking. No mirror, though. Claire had watched enough crime shows to know interrogation rooms usually had two-way mirrors. "Sit," Chen said. She sat. The handcuffs were still on, and her shoulders were starting to ache. "I want to call my brother," Claire said. Ryan was a federal prosecutor. He'd know what to do, how to make this nightmare stop. "You'll get your phone call." Mendoza left without another word. Chen followed, and the door locked behind them with a heavy click. Claire was alone. She counted the tiles on the floor. 48. She studied the camera, wondering who was watching. She tested the handcuffs, not trying to escape, just assessing. Standard police issue, tight enough to be uncomfortable, but not cutting off circulation. 20 minutes passed, then 40, then an hour. Claire's training kicked in the same mental discipline that got her through 18-hour shifts. Stay calm, conserve energy, don't panic. But underneath the calm, fear was starting to coil. This wasn't normal. None of this was normal. The door opened at the 90-minute mark. Claire looked up, expecting Mendoza or maybe a detective. Instead, 3 people walked in wearing suits, not police uniforms, suits, the kind federal agents wore. The woman leading them was in her 50s, with steel gray hair, pulled back tight, and eyes that could have cut glass. She carried a leather folder and moved with the kind of confidence that came from decades of authority. "Ms. Ashford," the woman said, her voice crisp and cold. "My name is Lynn Carver. I'm the director of a federal task force investigating matters of national security." She sat down across from Claire, setting the folder on the table between them. The 2 men remained standing, positioned on either side of the door like guards. Claire's mouth had gone dry. "I don't understand. I stopped a man from assaulting 2 teenagers. That's not a federal matter." "No," Carver agreed, "it's not." She opened the folder and Claire saw photographs, old photographs. Some were from her time in the Army, her medical unit deployed to Afghanistan. Others were more recent surveillance photos of Claire at the hospital, at her apartment, at the grocery store where she'd just been arrested. They'd been watching her. "How long were you stationed at Bagram Air Base?" Carver asked, as if they were having a casual conversation. Claire's heart was hammering now, but she kept her face neutral. 4 years, 2012 to 2016. "And what was your role?" "Combat medic. I treated wounded soldiers and civilians." "That's all?" The question was loaded, a trap wrapped in polite inquiry. Claire knew better than to fall into it. "Yes." Carver smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We both know that's not true, Ms. Ashford. You were also tasked with documenting medical supply distribution. Weren't you tracking inventory, verifying shipments?" Claire said nothing. "You noticed discrepancies," Carver continued. "Supplies that were ordered but never arrived. Equipment that was billed to the government but ended up on the black market. You started keeping records." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me." Carver's voice sharpened like a blade. "We know about the files, Claire. We know you copied documents. We know you took photographs. What we don't know is where you've hidden them or who you've shared them with." The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. Claire forced herself to breathe normally, to not show the panic clawing at her throat. "I want a lawyer," she said. "This isn't a criminal proceeding. You're not under arrest." "Then I'm free to go." "No." Carver leaned back in her chair, studying Claire like she was a specimen under glass. "You're not." One of the men by the door shifted his weight and Claire caught a glimpse of the weapon holstered under his jacket. Federal agents, armed, here for her. What do you want? Claire asked quietly. I want you to understand the situation you're in. Carver pulled out another photograph, this one more recent. Claire's chest constricted. It was her brother Ryan leaving the federal courthouse in D.C. Ryan Ashford, federal prosecutor, decorated career, currently working on several high-profile corruption cases. He's your only living family, isn't he? The threat was implicit but unmistakable. Claire felt rage surge up hot and sharp, cutting through the fear. Don't you dare, she whispered. Then cooperate. Carver's tone softened slightly, but her eyes remained cold. Tell me where the files are. Tell me who you've talked to, and this all goes away. You walk out of here, go back to your life, and your brother stays safe. Claire's mind was racing. The files Carver was talking about were real, meticulously documented evidence of fraud she'd witnessed during her deployment. Millions of dollars in medical supplies that never reached wounded soldiers, procurement contracts awarded to companies owned by military contractors, equipment marked as delivered that had vanished into thin air. She'd kept copies because she was terrified, because the people involved had power connections, the ability to make problems disappear. And she'd been right to be afraid. But she'd also been smart enough to set up insurance. I need to think, Claire said. You don't have time to think. Carver stood abruptly, snapping the folder closed. You have until tomorrow morning to decide, cooperate or face the consequences. She left, taking the two agents with her. The door locked again and Claire was alone once more. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally breaking through her control. She thought of Ryan, probably at his office right now, completely unaware that his sister had just been threatened by a federal task force. She thought of the files encrypted and hidden in multiple locations, her insurance policy against exactly this kind of pressure. And she thought about the grocery store, about two scared teenagers and a racist clerk, and how such a small moment had detonated her entire life. Hours passed. No one came. No food, no water, no phone call. Claire's watch said it was past midnight when the door finally opened again. This time it was just Carver alone. She looked tired, the sharp edges softened slightly by exhaustion. You should know, Carver said, leaning against the doorframe, that this isn't personal. I actually admire what you tried to do documenting that fraud. It was brave. Stupid, but brave. Then let me go. I can't. Carver's voice was almost gentle. The people behind that fraud, the ones whose names are in your files, they're powerful. More powerful than you can imagine. And they're scared. Scared people make dangerous decisions. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Carver pushed off the doorframe. There's someone who wants to talk to you, someone with the authority to make this easier or much, much worse. He'll be here in the morning. Who? But Carver was already gone. Claire didn't sleep. She couldn't. Her mind kept spinning through scenarios, outcomes, possibilities. Who was coming to see her? What did they want beyond the files? And most importantly, how could she protect Ryan while protecting the truth? Dawn broke with pale light filtering through the single high window in the cell. Claire watched it, trying to find some comfort in the sunrise, some sign that things would be okay. Then the door opened. The man who walked in was older, probably in his late 60s, with silver hair and a face Claire recognized immediately. She'd seen it on television and newspapers, on campaign posters. Senator Paul Hargrave. He closed the door behind him and stood there for a long moment, studying her with eyes that had probably stared down presidents and prime ministers. When he finally spoke, his voice was smooth, practiced, the voice of someone who'd spent decades convincing people to do what he wanted. Ms. Ashford, I apologize for the dramatic circumstances of our meeting. Claire's throat was tight. Hargrave wasn't just any senator. He chaired the Armed Services Committee, controlled billions in defense spending, and had his hands in every military contract that mattered. If her files implicated him, and they did, then she wasn't just facing jail time. She was facing erasure. What do you want? She managed to ask. Hargrave sat down across from her, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd had multiple back surgeries. I want to offer you a way out, a clean exit from all of this. In exchange for what? Your silence, your files, and your assurance that you'll never speak of what you witnessed. And if I refuse, his expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, something cold and reptilian. Then you and your brother will both disappear. Not literally, of course, but your careers will be destroyed. Ryan's cases will fall apart tainted by association with his criminal sister. Your nursing license will be revoked. You'll be prosecuted for theft of government documents, possibly treason. I didn't commit treason. I documented fraud. Semantics. Hargrave waved a hand dismissively. The prosecution will argue you endangered national security by stealing classified information. And they'll win because I'll make sure they win. Claire felt the weight of his power crushing down on her. This was a man who'd survived 5 decades in Washington by being ruthless, by knowing exactly where the bodies were buried because he'd helped bury most of them. But Claire had survived too. Survived war zones and emergency rooms and nights when patients died in her arms despite everything she did to save them. She'd survived by being stubborn, by refusing to give up even when logic said she should. No, she said quietly. Hargrave's eyebrows rose slightly. No, I won't give you the files, I won't stay silent, and you can't make me. For the first time, emotion cracked through his polished exterior, anger sharp and hot. You have no idea what you're refusing the young lady. I'm offering you your life back. You're offering me a cage. Claire leaned forward as much as the handcuffs would allow, and I'd rather fight than disappear quietly. Hargrave stood his jaw tight. Then you've made your choice, and you'll have to live with the consequences. He left without another word, the door slamming behind him with terrible finality. Claire sat in the silence that followed, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She'd just refused a United States senator, a man with the power to destroy her completely. But she'd also bought herself something precious time. Because Hargrave didn't know about the dead man's switch, the automated system she'd set up years ago that would release her files if she didn't check in every 72 hours. And her 72 hours were almost up. The hours after Hargrave left felt like drowning in slow motion. Claire sat in that freezing room, watching the clock on the wall tick toward her deadline. 68 hours since her last check-in. 4 hours left before the dead man's switch triggered and sent her files to every major news outlet and congressional oversight committee she'd programmed into the system. 4 hours to decide if she was really going to let it happen. The door opened at 6 a.m. Lynn Carver again, but this time she looked rattled. Her normal perfect composure cracked around the edges. You need to stop whatever you've set in motion, Carver said without preamble. She didn't sit down, just stood there with her arms crossed tight against her chest. We know you have a failsafe. We know something's going to happen if you don't prevent it. Claire kept her face blank. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play games. Hargrave is furious, and when that man gets angry, people get hurt. Carver's voice dropped lower. I've seen him destroy careers, families, entire lives. He'll do the same to you and your brother. Then let him try on. Carver slammed her palm on the table so hard Claire flinched. You stubborn fool! You think you're some kind of hero? You're just a nurse who stuck her nose where it didn't belong. Those files you have, they don't just implicate Hargrave. They connect to defense contractors, intelligence operations, people who make senators look like children playing dress-up. Good, Claire said. Then everyone should know what they did. And what about Ryan? Carver pulled out her phone, turned it toward Claire. The screen showed a live feed security camera footage of Ryan's apartment building in D.C. He's home right now, probably making coffee, getting ready for work, completely unaware that there are 3 armed men in a van across the street waiting for orders. Claire's stomach dropped. You wouldn't. I won't. But Hargrave will. He's already made calls. Carver leaned closer, her breath visible in the cold air. Give me the access codes. Tell me how to stop the release, and those men stand down. For the first time since this nightmare started, Claire felt her resolve waver. Ryan didn't deserve this. He'd worked his whole life to build his career to make a difference, prosecuting white-collar criminals and corrupt officials. He was good, genuinely good, one of the few people Claire trusted completely. But if she gave in now, everything she'd risked, everything those soldiers had died for when medical supplies never reached them, it would all mean nothing. No, Claire whispered. Carver's face went pale. What? I said no. Louder this time, stronger. Call your men off or don't, but I won't give you those codes. Carver stared at her for a long moment, something like respect flickering across her features before hardening back into cold professionalism. Then God help you both. She left, the door locked, and Claire was alone with her choice and 3 hours and 42 minutes left on the clock. Except 10 minutes later, the door opened again. This time it was someone Claire had never seen before, a young man in his 30s wearing jeans and a Georgetown sweatshirt. He looked nervous, kept glancing back over his shoulder. Ms. Ashford, his voice was quiet, urgent. My name is David Reese. I work for the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. I need you to listen very carefully because I don't have much time. Claire sat up straighter. Who are you really? I told you, FBI. I've been investigating Hargrave and his network for 2 years. He moved closer, speaking fast. Your files, the ones you compiled at Bagram, they're the missing piece. We've had fragments testimony from whistleblowers who later recanted financial records that disappeared. But we've never had documentation as complete as what you have. How do you know what I have? Because I've been tracking the same fraud you documented. Medical supply chains, procurement contracts, shell companies funneling money to offshore accounts. You saw it from the inside. I've been trying to prove it from the outside. Claire studied him, looking for deception. If you're really FBI, why are you sneaking in here? Why aren't you arresting Carver and Hargrave? Because I can't prove anything yet, and because half my own agency is compromised. Reese ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. Hargrave has people everywhere, DOJ, FBI, even the Inspector General's office. I submit evidence and it gets buried. I build cases and they fall apart. I need what you have. What makes you think I'll trust you? Because Ryan trusts me. That stopped Claire cold. Reese pulled out his phone, showed her a text thread with her brother's number. Recent messages about a case they were working together, coordinating between federal prosecutors and FBI investigators. He doesn't know I'm here, doesn't know about you or your files. But if you tell me how to access them, I can protect both of you. Claire's mind raced. Could this be real? Or was it another trap, another angle Hargrave was playing to get what he wanted? Prove you're who you say you are, she said. Tell me something only someone close to Ryan would know. Reese didn't hesitate. Your father died when Ryan was 12 and you were 8. Heart attack, sudden. Your mother remarried 2 years later to a man named Bill Hendricks, who worked for the State Department. Ryan hated him, left for college early, and hasn't spoken to him since. You followed Ryan to D.C. after your Army service ended, worked at Georgetown Medical for 3 years before transferring to the ER at Washington General. You have a dog named Scout who stays with your neighbor when you work night shifts. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. She didn't have a dog, never had, but that was something she and Ryan used to talk about as kids, getting a ball and naming it Scout after To Kill a Mockingbird. He told you about Scout, she said softly. He tells me a lot, says you're the only family that matters. Reese crouched down so they were eye level. Let me help you, please. 3 hours and 28 minutes left. Claire made her decision. There's a storage unit in Baltimore, Unit 247 at the Secure Lock facility on North Avenue. The access code is 081492, my father's birthday. Inside, there's a laptop disconnected from any network. The files are on an encrypted drive password protected with a randomized key that changes every 72 hours based on an algorithm I wrote. Reese was typing notes into his phone. How do I get the current password? You don't? Not unless I give it to you directly. Claire leaned forward. But if I don't check in with the system in 3 hours, it automatically sends everything to a preset list of recipients. News outlets, congressional committees, the Inspector General, the Secretary of Defense. Can you delay it? Not from here. I need access to a computer with internet. Reese stood, his expression grim. Then we need to get you out of here. How this place is locked down, federal agents everywhere. Leave that to me. He moved toward the door, paused. When I come back, be ready to move fast. And don't trust anyone except me and Ryan. No one. He left before Claire could respond. The silence that followed was suffocating. She wanted to believe him, wanted to think rescue was coming. But years of watching people lie in the ER, watching them promise to quit drinking or stop using drugs or leave their abusive partners, had taught her that hope was dangerous. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Claire's leg bounced anxiously, her eyes fixed on the door. When it finally opened, it wasn't Reese. It was Ryan. Her brother stood in the doorway, still in his suit from yesterday, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His eyes found hers and something in his expression broke. Claire, his voice cracked. Jesus Christ, Claire, what's happening? She stood so fast the chair scraped backward. Ryan, you shouldn't be here. It's not safe. Not safe. I got a call at 4 in the morning telling me my sister was being held on federal charges. I've been trying to find you for hours. He moved into the room and Claire saw Agent Reese behind him, standing guard at the door. David finally told me the truth, told me everything. Everything about the files, about Hargrave, about what you saw in Afghanistan. Ryan's hands were shaking. Why didn't you tell me to protect you? The less you knew, the safer you were. Safe? Ryan laughed, a bitter sound. Claire, they threatened to kill me this morning. 3 men outside my building with guns. Safe doesn't exist anymore. Reese stepped inside, closing the door. We need to move this conversation quickly. I bought us maybe 20 minutes by telling Carver you wanted to see your brother before deciding whether to cooperate. But she's suspicious. What's the plan? Claire asked. We walk out together, you, me, Ryan. We tell them you've agreed to turn over the files in person, that you'll only do it with your brother present as a witness. They'll take us to wherever they want, probably a secure facility. But once we're mobile, once we're out of this building, we have options. Options like what? Ryan demanded. Like the FBI tactical team I've got on standby 6 blocks away. Like the warrant I prepared for Hargrave's arrest the second we have the files authenticated. Like the U.S. Marshal who's been briefed and is ready to take you both into protective custody. Reese looked between them. But it only works if we move now, before Hargrave realizes what's happening. Claire's watch said 2 hours and 46 minutes. Cutting it close? Too close. Okay, she said, let's do it. Reese removed her handcuffs. The relief of having her hands free was immediate, blood rushing back into her fingers. Ryan pulled her into a hug, holding her so tight she could feel his heart hammering against her cheek. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I got you into this. You didn't get me into anything. We're family. We face this together. Reese cleared his throat. Touching, but we need to go, now. They moved into the hallway, Reese leading, Ryan staying close to Claire. The building was different in daylight, less menacing, but still oppressive. They passed 2 officers who nodded at Reese but didn't stop them. Made it to the elevator, pressed the button for the ground floor. The elevator descended in agonizing silence. Claire watched the numbers tick down. 4th floor, 3rd, 2nd. The doors opened on the 1st floor. Lynn Carver was waiting. She stood flanked by 4 armed agents, her expression carved from ice. Agent Reese, how convenient. I was just coming to find you. Reese's hand moved toward his weapon, but stopped. 4 against 1. Bad odds. Director Carver, he said evenly. Ms. Ashford has agreed to cooperate. We're transporting her to retrieve the files. Is that so? Carver's gaze shifted to Claire. And you expect me to just let you walk out of here? You want the files, we'll get you the files, Ryan said, his prosecutor voice firm and authoritative. But we do it on our terms. My sister gets immunity from prosecution, full protection, and I'm present for every step. Carver smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're not in a position to negotiate, Mr. Ashford. Actually, we are. Reese pulled out his phone, turned it so Carver could see the screen. Because if we don't walk out of this building in the next 5 minutes, this video gets sent to every news network in the country. Claire couldn't see what was on the phone, but whatever it was made Carver's face go white. Where did you get that? Her voice was barely a whisper. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you let us go right now, or the world sees Senator Hargrave on camera discussing how to eliminate a federal witness, complete with timestamps and audio. For a long moment, nobody moved. The tension was so thick, Claire could taste it, metallic and sharp like blood. Then Carver stepped aside. Go, but this isn't over. Yeah, Reese said. It is. They walked past her, past the armed agents, through the lobby, and out into blinding morning sunlight. Claire's legs felt weak, unsteady. Ryan kept his hand on her elbow, supporting her. A black SUV was waiting at the curb, engine running. Reese opened the back door, ushered them inside, then climbed into the passenger seat. The driver pulled away from the station, immediately merging into traffic. Who was that? Ryan asked, gesturing toward the driver. Agent Melissa Torres. She's with me on this. Reese twisted in his seat to look at them. We're going to the Baltimore storage unit. How long until your dead man switch activates? Claire checked her watch. 2 hours and 18 minutes. We'll make it. Torres' fastest route to Baltimore. Already on it, the driver said. Her eyes met Claire's in the rearview mirror. You did the right thing, Miss Ashford. What you documented, it matters. Claire wanted to believe her, wanted to think this was really happening, that justice was actually possible, but she'd seen too much corruption, too many powerful people to escape consequences. They drove in tense silence for 15 minutes. The city gave way to highway traffic thinning. Ryan sat rigid beside her, his jaw clenched tight. "What was on that video?" Claire finally asked. "The one Reese showed Carver." Reese glanced at Torres, then back at her. "Security footage from a parking garage. Shows Hargrave meeting with a known mob enforcer and handing over cash, discussing methods for making problems disappear. We've had it for 6 months but couldn't authenticate the source. Carver didn't know we had it. Will it hold up in court? It'll destroy him in the media, and that's almost better. Public pressure, congressional hearings, criminal investigations." Reese's phone buzzed, so he checked it, frowned. "Torres, we've got a tail. Black sedan, 3 cars back." Torres adjusted the mirror. "Confirmed. What do you want to do?" "Lose them." The SUV accelerated smoothly, weaving through traffic. Claire grabbed the door handle as they swerved around a truck. Ryan cursed under his breath. "Who is it?" Claire asked. "Probably Hargrave's people. He's not going to let us just walk away." Reese pulled out his weapon, checked the magazine. "Torres, call in backup. We need that tactical team now." "On it." Torres grabbed the radio, started speaking in codes Claire didn't understand. The sedan behind them accelerated too, closing the distance. Claire could see 2 figures in the front seat, one of them talking into a phone. "They're calling in reinforcements," Torres said. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before this gets messy." "Exit here," Reese ordered. "We'll take surface streets, try to shake them." Torres took the exit at 70 miles per hour, tires screaming. The sedan followed. They blew through a red light, horns blaring around them. Ryan grabbed Claire's hand, squeezed hard. "It's going to be okay," he said, but his voice was tight with fear. "They're gaining," Torres reported. Claire looked back. The sedan was right behind them now, close enough she could see the driver's face. Hard, determined, familiar. "That's Chen," she said. "One of the cops who arrested me at the grocery store." "He's on Hargrave's payroll," Reese confirmed. "Has been for years." The sedan rammed them from behind. The SUV lurched forward, Claire's head snapping back against the headrest. Ryan shouted something she couldn't hear over the screech of metal. "Hold on." Torres jerked the wheel, taking it a sharp turn into a residential neighborhood. The sedan followed, relentless. Another impact from behind, harder this time. The SUV's back window shattered glass raining down. Claire ducked, covering her head. When she looked up, she saw Chen's partner leaning out the passenger window. He had a gun. "Get down!" Reese yelled. The first shot hit their rear tire. The SUV swerved violently, Torres fighting for control. They jumped a curb, sideswiped a parked car, spun 180 degrees before slamming into a telephone pole. The impact threw Claire forward against her seatbelt so hard she couldn't breathe. Her ribs screamed. Beside her, Ryan was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, teed but conscious. "Out, out, out!" Reese kicked his door open, dragging Torres with him. Claire fumbled with her seatbelt fingers, clumsy with shock. Ryan got his open first, reached over to help her. They stumbled out onto the street just as the sedan screeched to a stop 30 feet away. Chen and his partner emerged, weapons drawn. "Federal agents!" Reese shouted, his badge held high. "Drop your weapons!" Chen laughed. "You think that matters? Hargrave owns the bureau. He owns all of you." "Not all of us," Torres said quietly. She had her gun trained on Chen's center mass. "Last chance. Stand down." Instead, Chen raised his weapon toward Claire. Time slowed. Claire saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw the muzzle flash, felt Ryan slam into her, knocking her sideways, heard the shot impossibly loud. Ryan grunted, his body jerking. They hit the ground together, Claire's head cracking against pavement. Stars exploded across her vision. She blinked them away, tried to focus. Ryan was on top of her, his weight pressing her down, warm liquid spreading across her shirt. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." More gunshots, multiple weapons firing, shouting, sirens in the distance, getting closer. Claire pushed against Ryan, trying to see his face. His eyes were open, focused on her. "You okay?" he asked, his voice strained. "Ryan, you're shot." "Yeah." He coughed, red staining his lips. "Figured." Claire's training kicked in, years of emergency medicine overriding panic. She rolled him onto his back, hands already assessing the wound. Entry point just below his left shoulder, close to his lung. She pressed her palms against it, applying pressure. Blood pulsed hot between her fingers. "Stay with me," she ordered. "Ryan, look at me. Stay conscious." "Bossy," he mumbled, but his eyes were starting to lose focus. The gunfire had stopped. Claire risked a glance up and saw Chen on the ground, Torres standing over him. Reese was on his radio calling for medical assistance. The tactical team Reese had mentioned was pouring in from multiple vehicles securing the scene. But all Claire cared about was her brother bleeding out on the concrete while she tried desperately to save him. "Ambulance is 2 minutes out," Reese said, kneeling beside her. "How bad?" "Bad. He's losing too much blood. We need to get him to a hospital now." One of the tactical team members appeared with a first aid kit. Claire grabbed it, found gauze pads, packed them against the wound. Ryan gasped in pain. I know, I'm sorry." Her voice broke. "You're going to be fine. You hear me? You're going to be fine." "The files," Ryan whispered. "How much time?" Claire checked her watch with blood-slicked fingers. 1 hour and 37 minutes. "Enough time. Don't worry about the files." "Have to. This only matters if the truth comes out." His hand found hers, gripped weakly. "Promise me. Whatever happens to me, you finish this. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise." "I promise," Claire said, tears streaming down her face. The ambulance arrived, paramedics rushing over with a stretcher. Claire briefed them rapidly, medical terminology flowing automatically. GSW to the left chest, significant blood loss. BP dropping, pulse thready. They loaded Ryan efficiently, starting an IV line, applying oxygen. "I'm coming with you," Claire said. "Ma'am, we need space to work." "I'm a combat medic and an ER nurse. I'm coming." The paramedic nodded. Claire climbed in, sat beside her brother while they worked. The ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing. Reese appeared at the back door just before it closed. "I'll meet you at the hospital. Torres is coming with me. We'll get to that storage unit." "No," Claire shook her head. "I have to do it. I'm the only one who knows the password algorithm." "Claire, give me your phone. I can access the system remotely, delay the release." She held out her hand. "Trust me." Reese hesitated, then passed her his phone. "What do you need?" "A laptop, internet connection, in 45 minutes. She looked down at Ryan, his face pale and slack. "Make sure my brother lives. That's all I need from you." The ambulance door closed. Through the small window, Claire watched Reese fall away as they accelerated toward the hospital. She turned her attention to the phone fingers flying across the screen. 1 hour and 23 minutes. She could do this. She had to. Because Ryan was right. None of this mattered unless the truth came out. And Claire was done running, done hiding, done letting powerful men decide who suffered for their crimes. Senator Hargrave wanted her silence. He was about to get the opposite. The whole world was about to hear what she knew. The ambulance hit every pothole between the crash site and Washington General Hospital. Each jolt sent fresh blood seeping through the gauze packed against Ryan's chest. Claire kept her hands pressed firm, counting his respirations, watching the monitor as his oxygen saturation dipped lower. "Come on, Ryan. Stay with me." She leaned closer, her voice cutting through the wail of sirens. "Remember when Dad taught us to swim? You panicked in the deep end, and I had to pull you out. You owe me for that." Ryan's eyelids fluttered. His lips moved, but no sound came out. The paramedic across from Claire was named Jackson, according to his badge. Young, maybe 25, with steady hands that work quickly. "BP's dropping, 80 over 50. We need to move faster." The driver's voice crackled through the speaker. "ETA 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Claire checked Reese's phone with one blood-smeared hand. 1 hour and 11 minutes until the dead man's switch triggered. The phone screen was cracked from the crash, but still functional. She needed to access her encrypted system. Needed to either delay the release or let it go through, but right now all she could think about was her brother's labored breathing. "Ms. Ashford." Jackson's tone had shifted urgent, his lungs collapsing. "I need to decompress." Claire understood immediately. Tension pneumothorax, air building up in the chest cavity, crushing the lung, preventing the heart from pumping effectively. Without intervention, Ryan would code in minutes. "Do it," she said. Jackson grabbed a large bore needle from his kit. Claire shifted her position, maintaining pressure on the gunshot wound while giving him access. She'd done this procedure herself in Afghanistan, done it in ambulances and helicopters, and once in a ditch while mortars fell around them. But this was Ryan, her brother, the only family she had left. Jackson found the landmark, the second intercostal space at the mid-clavicular line, and pushed the needle through. There was resistance, then a sudden rush of air as the trapped pressure released. Ryan's chest rose more easily. His oxygen saturation started climbing. "Good," Claire breathed. "That's good." The ambulance screamed into the hospital bay, brakes squealing. The back doors flew open and a trauma team was already waiting. Claire recognized the attending physician, Dr. Sarah Chen, had worked with her on dozens of cases. "Ashford?" Chen's eyes widened. "What are you doing in the ambulance?" "It's my brother. Gunshot wound to the left chest, single entry point, significant blood loss, needle decompression, performed in transit." Claire rattled off the details while they transferred Ryan to the gurney. She tried to climb out, follow them inside, but Jackson caught her arm. "You're injured too. You need to be checked." "I'm fine. You have blood in your hair, and you're favoring your left side. Protocol says." "Protocol can wait." Claire pulled it free, jogged after the gurney. Her ribs did hurt, sharp pain with every breath, probably cracked from the crash. Didn't matter. They burst through the trauma bay doors. The team moved with practiced efficiency, cutting away Ryan's clothes, establishing multiple IV lines, hanging blood products. Chen called out orders rapid fire, while a nurse documented everything. "Systolics down to 70. He's shocky. Get me 2 units, Oneg stat." Claire stood against the wall, trying to stay out of the way. Her hands were shaking now, delayed adrenaline crash hitting hard. She looked down at Reese's phone. 1 hour and 4 minutes. She had to make a decision. Delay the release, buy time to coordinate with Reese and make sure the files went to the right people with proper context, or let it trigger automatically, ensure nothing could stop the truth from coming out, even if something happened to her. Ryan would want her to let it trigger. Ryan, who'd built his career on prosecuting corruption, who believed in justice even when the system failed. But if those files went out raw without coordination, Hargrave and his network would have time to spin the narrative, discredit the evidence, make Claire look like a disgruntled veteran with an axe to grind. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered anyway. "Ms. Ashford," Lynn Carver's voice tight with barely controlled fury, "you made a serious mistake running from us. Your people shot my brother. That wasn't authorized. Chen acted alone, and he's been dealt with." A pause. "Is Ryan alive?" Claire's throat tightened. "For now, no thanks to you. I need you to listen very carefully. Senator Hargrave knows about your dead man switch. He's mobilized a cyber team to intercept the files when they're transmitted. They'll corrupt the data, make it look like a malware attack, discredit everything before the media can verify it. You're lying." "I wish I was." Carver's tone had changed, less adversarial, almost pleading. "I've been in this game 30 years, Ms. Ashford. I've seen people like Hargrave operate. He doesn't make threats, he eliminates problems. And right now, you're his biggest problem." "Then I'm already dead. Why should I trust anything you say?" "Because I'm trying to save you, and because I'm tired." The admission seemed to cost her something. "I've spent my career following orders, protecting secrets, convincing myself it was necessary for national security. But watching Hargrave operate, seeing what he's willing to do, I'm done. I want him brought down just as much as you do. But it has to be done right." Claire pressed her back against the cold tile wall. "What do you want from me?" "Delay your release. 24 hours. Give me time to coordinate with the Inspector General, get protection in place for the witnesses named in your files, prepare proper criminal referrals. If you just dump everything onto the internet, half those witnesses will disappear before they can testify. Evidence will be destroyed. Hargrave will weather the storm and come out stronger. Or you're stalling so he can eliminate me. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. The fact that you're still breathing should tell you something." Carver's voice softened. "I know you don't trust me. You shouldn't. But trust this: Ryan needs surgery, major surgery, and the last thing he needs is his sister getting killed while he's on the operating table." In the trauma bay, Chen was calling for an OR. "We need to get him upstairs now. He's bleeding into his chest cavity faster than we can replace it." Nurses rushed to unlock the gurney wheels. Someone shouted for the elevator. Ryan's face was gray, his eyes closed. "Ms. Ashford," Carver pressed, "do we have a deal?" Claire made her decision. 12 hours, not 24. And I want Reese and Torres with me the entire time. Any sign you're playing me, the files go out immediately. "Done. Stay at the hospital. I'm sending a protection detail. Don't leave Ryan's side for any reason." The line went dead. Claire stared at the phone, wondering if she just made the worst mistake of her life or the smartest. No way to know until it played out. The trauma team wheeled Ryan toward the elevator. Claire hurried after them, but Chen blocked her path. Family waits in the surgical waiting room, 4th floor. Sarah, please. I need to be with him. You need to let us do our job. Chen's expression was sympathetic but firm. Go upstairs. I'll send updates every 30 minutes. I promise. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to pull rank or threaten or do something, anything. But Chen was right. The best thing she could do for Ryan was stay out of the way and let the surgeons work. She took the stairs instead of the elevator, needing the physical exertion to burn off the fear. 4th floor. The surgical waiting area was eerily quiet. Just a few of the other families scattered across the plastic chairs, all wearing the same expression of exhausted dread. Claire chose a seat near the window and pulled out Reese's phone. 53 minutes. She navigated to a secure browser, entered a series of codes that accessed her dead man's switch system. The interface was basic, just a countdown timer and 2 buttons. Delay or release. She hit delay, entered a new 12-hour window, confirmed the change. The timer reset. Her insurance policy was still active, just postponed. Now she had to trust that Carver was being honest. Trust that Reese could coordinate with the right people. Trust that Ryan would survive surgery. Trust had never been Claire's strong suit. Ms. Ashford, a woman's voice soft but alert. Claire looked up. 2 people stood in front of her, a man and a woman, both in their 40s, dressed in civilian clothes but carrying themselves with obvious military bearing. The woman had short, dark hair and observant eyes that scanned the room constantly. I'm Agent Maria Santos, FBI. This is Agent Thomas Wright. Director Carver sent us to provide protection. Great. Claire didn't bother hiding her skepticism. How do I know you're not here to finish what Chen started? Santos pulled out her credentials, let Claire examine them closely. Real FBI assigned to the Protective Operations Unit, Wright did the same. We understand your hesitation, Wright said. His voice had a slight southern accent, Georgia maybe. But we're here to keep you alive. That's our only job. Where's Reese Torres? En route to Baltimore to secure your storage unit. They should arrive within the hour. Santos took a seat 2 chairs away, maintaining a protective position. Director Carver briefed us on the situation. We know about the files, about Hargrave, about the threats. We're on your side. Claire wanted to believe them, wanted to think the FBI still had people who cared about justice over politics. But she'd seen too much corruption, too many compromised officials. Stay close then, she said, because when those files go public, everyone in Hargrave's network is going to want me dead. 20 minutes passed in tense silence. Santos and Wright maintained their vigil. Wright by the door, Santos near the window. Other families came and went, called back for updates on their loved ones. Nobody called for Claire. Her phone buzzed. Reese, we're at the storage unit. Need that access code. Claire recited the numbers. Unit 247. The laptop is in a gray case under the shelf. Don't turn it on until I walk you through the security protocols. Understood. How's Ryan? In surgery. No updates yet. Claire's voice cracked. Reese, if this goes wrong, if Carver's playing us, she's not. I've worked with her before, years ago, before she got pulled into Hargrave's orbit. She was a good agent once. Maybe she still is. Maybe isn't good enough. It's what we have. Sit tight. We'll call you when we have the laptop secured. The line went dead. Claire checked the timer, 11 hours and 38 minutes. Footsteps in the hallway made her look up. A man in surgical scrubs approached his mask, pulled down exhaustion written across his features. Dr. Marcus Webb, one of the best thoracic surgeons in D.C. Claire, stood. Ryan Ashford, is he? Out of surgery. He's alive. Webb rubbed his face, but it was close. The bullet nicked his pulmonary artery. We had to repair that, reinflate his lung, remove 2 fragments of shrapnel from his chest cavity. He lost a lot of blood. If you hadn't stopped that bleeding at the scene, he wouldn't have made it to the OR. Relief hit Claire so hard, her knees buckled. Santos caught her elbow, steadied her. Can I see him by me? Claire asked. He's in recovery, still intubated. Once he's stable enough, we'll move him to the ICU. Give it an hour. Webb's expression turned serious. He's going to need extensive physical therapy, probably months of recovery, and that's assuming no complications. Infection, blood clots, pneumonia. There's a lot that could still go wrong. But he'll live. He'll live. Webb left. Claire sank back into her chair, her whole body trembling. Ryan was alive. Whatever else happened, whatever consequences came from the files, her brother was alive. Her phone rang again. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Mrs. Ashford, this is Senator Hargrave. His voice was cold, controlled. I believe congratulations are in order. Your brother survived. For now. Claire's hand tightened on the phone. You threatening him again? Not a threat. A statement of fact. Ryan is lying in an ICU bed, vulnerable, dependent on machines to keep him breathing. It would be remarkably easy for something to go wrong. A medication error. A contaminated IV line. These things happen in hospitals. Touch him and I release everything right now. You won't, Hargrave sounded certain, because you're smart enough to know that releasing those files doesn't protect you or Ryan. It just ensures we have nothing left to lose. And when powerful people have nothing to lose, they become very dangerous. What do you want? A meeting. You and me face to face. No agents, no lawyers, no recording devices. Just two people having an honest conversation about how to resolve this situation. You mean how I surrender and disappear? I mean how we both get what we want. You want justice for the soldiers who died because of fraudulent supply contracts. I want to protect my legacy and the larger operations those contracts funded. He paused. You think I'm the villain in this story, Ms. Ashford, but you don't understand the full picture. Those procurement irregularities you documented, they were necessary for classified operations. Black budget programs that kept this country safe. That's garbage. You stole money meant for wounded soldiers. I redirected funds to more critical uses. There's a difference. His tone hardened. Meet with me. Let me explain the full scope of what you're threatening to expose, and then decide if you really want to bring it all down. Claire looked at Santos and Wright, both watching her intently. Santos shook her head slightly. Don't do it. But Claire's mind was racing. A face-to-face meeting with Hargrave could be a trap, an opportunity for him to eliminate her quietly. Or it could be a chance to get him on record admitting to the fraud, implicating himself. When and where, she asked. Tonight, midnight. There's a parking garage on K Street, 3rd level. Come alone or the deal's off. I want immunity for Ryan. Complete protection, witness security, everything. Done, but only if you come alone. The line went dead. Claire sat there staring at the phone. Please tell me you're not actually considering meeting him, Santos said. He just offered Ryan immunity. He offered you a lie. Wright moved closer, his expression grave. Hargrave doesn't make deals. He eliminates threats. You show up at that parking garage, you won't leave alive. Then I'll wear a wire, get him talking, get him to incriminate himself. Too risky, Santos insisted. Let us set up a proper operation, controlled environment backup teams. There's no time for that. Claire checked her watch. I've got 11 hours before my files release. If I can get Hargrave's confession before then, it corroborates everything in those documents. Makes them impossible to discredit. Santos and Wright exchanged a look. Some silent communication passed between them. If you're doing this, Wright finally said, we're coming with you. Hidden at a distance, but close enough to intervene if things go south. He said, come alone. He also said, you're smart. Prove him right. Don't walk into an execution. Claire's phone buzzed. Text from Reese. We have the laptop. Heading back to DC. Files are intact. Another text came through immediately after. From an unknown number. A photo. Claire opened it and her blood went cold. It was Ryan in the ICU, unconscious, intubated. The angle suggested someone had walked right into his room and taken the picture within the last few minutes. The message below read, he's so vulnerable, anything could happen. Claire stood abruptly. Someone's in Ryan's room, right now. Santos and Wright were already moving. They ran for the ICU, Claire right behind them. Her ribs screamed with every step, but she didn't slow down. The ICU floor was quiet. The lights dimmed for patient rest. They burst through the double doors. The nurse at the station looked up in alarm. Ryan Ashford's room. Where is it? Claire demanded. Room 12, but visiting hours are... Claire was already running. Room 12 was at the end of the hall. The door was closed. Through the window, she could see Ryan's still-form machines beeping steadily, and a man in scrubs standing over him, hand reaching toward the IV line. Claire slammed through the door. The man spun his face, registering shock. She recognized him from the grocery store from Carver's files. Another cop on Hargrave's payroll. Step away from him, Claire said, her voice deadly quiet. The man's hand moved toward his waistband. Right was faster, weapon drawn and aimed. Don't even think about it. Hands where I can see them. The man raised his hands slowly. Santos moved in, patted him down, removed a concealed pistol and a syringe from his pocket. She held up the syringe. Potassium chloride, Santos said grimly, enough to stop his heart in seconds. Claire felt rage burn through her, white hot and consuming. This man had walked into her brother's room planning to murder him, make it look like a complication from surgery. Who sent you? She demanded. The man smiled. You know who, and you know he won't stop. You can't protect your brother forever. Wright hauled him out of the room, reading him his rights. Santos stayed with Claire, her hand on Claire's shoulder. He's okay. Ryan's okay. We got here in time. Claire sank into the chair beside Ryan's bed, her whole body shaking. She took his hand, careful of the IV lines. His skin was warm, his pulse steady beneath her fingers. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I got you into this. Ryan's eyes flickered open, unfocused and confused. He tried to speak around the breathing tube, couldn't. Claire stood, leaned over him. Don't try to talk. You're okay. You're safe now. She smoothed his hair back from his forehead. I'm going to end this. I promise. Hargrave won't hurt you again. His hand squeezed hers weakly. Then his eyes closed, sedation pulling him back under. Claire straightened, her mind made up. She'd been running, hiding, trying to protect herself and Ryan by staying quiet. But silence hadn't kept them safe. If anything, it had made them more vulnerable. No more waiting, no more playing defense. She pulled out her phone, called Reese. Where are you, Bob? About 40 minutes from DC. What happened? Hargrave sent someone to kill Ryan. We stopped him, but barely. Claire's voice was steel. I'm done waiting. I'm meeting Hargrave tonight, getting his confession and ending this. Claire, that's not up for debate. Either help me or stay out of my way. Silence on the line. Then Reese sighed. What do you need? A wire that can't be detected, backup that can't be seen, and a way to make sure if something happens to me, the files and the recording both go public immediately. I can do that, but Claire, you need to understand if this goes wrong. It won't, because I'm not giving him a choice. She looked down at Ryan, fighting for every breath. He threatened my brother. That was his mistake. 6 hours later, Claire stood in the entrance of the K Street parking garage, dressed in dark jeans and a black jacket. The wire Reese had given her was embedded in the jacket lining, completely invisible. Her phone was in her pocket, running a backup recording app that would upload to the cloud in real time. Wright and Santos were positioned on the second level, armed and ready. Reese and Torres were in a van 2 blocks away, monitoring the wire feed. Claire took the stairs to the third level. Her footsteps echoed in the concrete space. Most of the parking spots were empty at midnight, just a few cars scattered around. A black town car sat in the far corner, engine running. As Claire approached, the back door opened. Senator Hargrave stepped out. He looked older in person, the TV makeup gone, revealing deep lines around his eyes and mouth. But his posture was still commanding, his gaze still sharp. Ms. Ashford, thank you for coming. Let's skip the pleasantries. You tried to kill my brother 3 hours ago. That wasn't me. That was an overzealous subordinate acting without authorization. Hargrave's tone was smooth, practiced. I've dealt with him. Dealt with him how? He's no longer a concern, neither to you nor to me. Claire felt sick. You killed him. I eliminated a liability, just like I'm trying to avoid eliminating you. Hargrave took a step closer. You're a good person, Claire. I've read your service record, your medical files, testimonials from soldiers you saved. You have integrity. I respect that. You don't respect anything except power. Power is what allows people like me to do necessary things, unpleasant things. He clasped his hands behind his back. Those supply contracts you documented, yes, they were fraudulent on paper, but the money didn't disappear. It funded Black Ops missions that couldn't go through normal channels, rescued hostages, eliminated terrorist cells, prevented attacks that would have killed thousands of Americans. That's convenient. Justify theft by wrapping it in the flag. It's the truth. Hargrave's voice hardened. You think the world operates on simple morality, good and evil, black and white. It doesn't. Sometimes protecting this country requires breaking laws, crossing lines, making sacrifices. Sacrifices like the soldiers who died because medical supplies never reached them. Acceptable losses in service of a greater mission. Claire's hands clenched. You're a monster. I'm a patriot who understands reality. Hargrave moved closer still, close enough she could smell his expensive cologne. And I'm offering you a way out. Take your brother, go into witness protection, live quietly somewhere safe. In exchange, the files stay buried and everyone forgets this happened. What about justice for the people you killed? There is no justice. There's only survival. Choose wisely. Claire looked into his eyes and saw the truth. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't negotiating. He was offering her a cage wrapped in false mercy, and if she refused, he'd bury her and Ryan both. Time to spring the trap. Tell me their names, she said quietly. What? The soldiers who died because of your fraudulent contracts. Tell me their name. If they're acceptable losses, you should at least know who you sacrificed. Hargrave's expression flickered uncertainty crossing his features. Staff Sergeant Marcus Johnson died from an infection because the antibiotics sent to our base were expired or replaced with placebos by your contractors. Private First Class Sarah Chen bled out because we didn't have enough plasma, even though procurement records showed it had been delivered. Specialist David Rodriguez lost his leg because surgical equipment was defective, sold to the military at full price by companies you owned through shell corporations. Stop. Why, you said they were acceptable losses. Say their names. Acknowledge what you did. I didn't kill those people. But his voice wavered. You signed the contracts. You took the money. You knew soldiers would die, and you did it anyway. Claire took a step toward him. That makes you a murderer, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. Hargrave's composure cracked. You self-righteous little... He caught himself, but too late. The mask had slipped. The recording was getting everything. You can't touch me, Hargrave said, recovering his control. I have allies at every level of government. Judges, prosecutors, intelligence directors. You release those files and I'll discredit you, destroy you, make you wish you'd taken my offer. Maybe, but at least those soldiers' families will know the truth. Something changed in Hargrave's eyes. Cold calculation replaced anger. This conversation is over. He turned toward his car. Claire's hand went to her pocket, fingers closing around her phone. That's when she heard the sound. A car engine accelerating. Headlights flooded the parking level, moving fast. Too fast. The vehicle was aimed straight at her. Claire dove sideways, hit the concrete hard. The car screamed past, missing her by inches. Tires squealed as it whipped around for another pass. Gunfire erupted from the second level. Wright and Santos engaging the driver. The car swerved, smashed into a concrete pillar. The driver's door flew open and two men emerged, weapons drawn. Hargrave was already in his town car, the vehicle peeling out toward the exit. Suspect fleeing, Claire heard Santos shout into her radio. Armed hostiles engaging. More shots. Claire scrambled behind a parked car, her heart hammering. This wasn't supposed to happen. Reese said they'd be safe, said the backup would prevent exactly this. One of the gunmen was moving toward her position. Claire looked around frantically for a weapon, an escape route, anything. The gunman rounded the car. Claire kicked out instinctively, catching his knee. He stumbled, his weapon discharging into the air. She grabbed for the gun, but he was stronger, shoving her back. Then Wright was there, tackling the gunman. They hit the ground hard, struggling for the weapon. A shot rang out. Wright went still. No, Santos sprinted over, weapon trained on the gunman. Drop it now. The gunman raised his hands, the gun clattering to the concrete. Santos kicked it away, handcuffed him in swift, brutal movements. Claire crawled to Wright. Blood was spreading across his chest, his breathing shallow. Hang on, she said, her hands already applying pressure. Stay with me. Wright's eyes found hers. Get Hargrave. We will. We got him on tape, everything he said. Good. Wright coughed, red bubbles forming on his lips. Make it count. His eyes lost focus. Claire felt for a pulse, found nothing. Santos was on her radio calling for medical assistance, backup, and APB on Hargrave's vehicle. Her voice was steady, but Claire could see tears on her cheeks. Reese and Torres arrived minutes later, FBI tactical teams flooding the garage. The area became a crime scene, yellow tape going up, evidence being collected. Claire sat against a car covered in blood again. Not Ryan's this time. Wright's, a good agent who died protecting her. Reese crouched beside her. Did you get it, the confession? Claire pulled out her phone with shaking hands. The recording app showed 53 minutes of audio uploaded successfully to the cloud. Every word, she whispered. Then Wright didn't die for nothing. Reese stood, offered his hand. Come on, we need to get you somewhere safe and release everything before Hargrave can run damage control. Claire took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. Where's Ryan? Still in ICU under guard, 20 agents around him now. Nobody's getting close. I want to see him. First we finish this. They drove to an FBI field office, a secure location with multiple layers of protection. Claire sat in a conference room while Reese and Torres compiled everything. The audio recording her files from the storage unit, Chen's confession about the attempted murder, in the ICU statements from the gunmen captured at the parking garage. The evidence was overwhelming, irrefutable. At 4 a.m., Reese hit send. The files went to the Washington Post, New York Times, Associated Press, every major network, the House and Senate oversight committees, the Inspector General, and the Department of Justice. Within 20 minutes, the first story broke. By 5 a.m., it was trending nationally. By 6 a.m., senators were calling for Hargrave's immediate resignation and arrest. Claire watched it unfold on the conference room TV, exhausted and numb. She'd done it, exposed the truth, brought down one of the most powerful men in Washington. But Wright was dead. Ryan was in the hospital. And she'd never be able to go back to her quiet life as an ER nurse. Her phone rang, unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Ms. Ashford, Carver's voice, but different now. Tired, relieved. It's done. Hargrave's been arrested. FBI picked him up trying to board a private plane to a non-extradition country. He's facing charges for fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice. Good. I know you don't believe me, but I'm glad you didn't back down. Glad someone finally stopped him. A pause. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Sorry I didn't do it myself years ago. Yeah, me too. Carver hung up. Claire set the phone down, closed her eyes. It was over. Finally over. Claire sat in that conference room for another hour, watching the news coverage spread like wildfire. Every channel showed the same footage: Hargrave in handcuffs being escorted from a private airfield, his face twisted with rage. The crawl at the bottom of the screen kept updating with new developments. 3 more senators implicated. Defense contractors under investigation. FBI raids happening simultaneously across 4 states. Reese brought her coffee she didn't drink and a sandwich she couldn't eat. You should get some rest. I need to see Ryan. The hospital swarmed with media. We'd have to sneak you in through the service entrance. Then do it. Torres drove them back to Washington General, taking side streets to avoid the news vans camped outside the main entrance. They parked in the loading dock and entered through the kitchen, past confused food service workers who stared at Claire's bloodstained clothes. The ICU was quieter than before, but the tension was still palpable. Agent Santos met them at the double doors, her eyes red-rimmed but her posture still alert. He's awake, Santos said. Been asking for you. Claire pushed through into Ryan's room. He was sitting up slightly, the breathing tube removed, an oxygen mask covering his nose and mouth. When he saw her, he tried to pull the mask away, but a nurse gently stopped him. Leave it on, Mr. Ashford. Your oxygen saturation is still too low. Claire took the chair beside his bed, reached for his hand. Hey. Ryan's voice was raspy, barely audible through the mask. You look terrible. You're one to talk. You got shot. Your fault. But his eyes were smiling. Did we win? We won. Hargrave's arrested. The files are public. It's over. Ryan closed his eyes, relief washing over his face. Good. That's good. He coughed, winced. How many people died? The question hit Claire like a punch. What? To get here to this moment, how many? She thought of Wright bleeding out on the parking garage floor. Thought of Staff Sergeant Johnson and Private Chen and Specialist Rodriguez, dead years ago because supplies never reached them. Thought of how many more soldiers might have died in the time she stayed silent, afraid to come forward. Too many, she whispered. Ryan squeezed her hand. But it's done now. You stopped it. Before Claire could respond, the door burst open. A man in an expensive suit strode in, trailed by 2 assistants. He had the polished look of someone who spent more time in front of cameras than in actual courtrooms. Ryan Ashford. The man extended his hand, then realized Ryan couldn't shake it. Gerald Marks, Deputy Attorney General. I apologize for the intrusion, but we have a situation developing that requires your immediate attention. I'm a little busy recovering from being shot, Ryan said dryly. I understand and I'm deeply sorry about that, but Ms. Ashford's disclosure has opened approximately 47 separate federal investigations. We need someone to coordinate the prosecutions, someone we can trust isn't compromised by Hargrave's network. Marks turned to Claire. Your files are incredibly detailed, Ms. Ashford, almost too detailed. We're going to need you to testify about how you obtained this information. Claire felt her stomach drop. I documented everything I witnessed. That's not illegal. No, but the methods you used to preserve that documentation might be. Copying classified documents, removing them from a secure facility, maintaining them without proper clearance. Marks pulled out a tablet, scrolled through something. The DOD is arguing that your actions, while well-intentioned, violated the Espionage Act. That's insane, Reese interjected. She's a whistleblower. There are protections which don't apply to classified material. Marks looked genuinely apologetic. I'm not saying I agree with the DOD's position. I'm saying it's a legal reality we have to navigate. Ryan pulled his oxygen mask down despite the nurse's protest. You want her cooperation, you give her full immunity. Written ironclad covering everything she did from the moment she stepped foot in Afghanistan until today. Non-negotiable. I don't have the authority to, then get someone who does. Ryan's voice was getting stronger, his prosecutor instincts overriding his physical weakness. Because if you try to prosecute my sister for exposing corruption, I will dedicate every remaining day of my career to burning your entire department to the ground. And trust me, I'm very good at what I do. Mark stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I'll make the call. But Ms. Ashford, you need to understand what you're walking into. Grand jury testimony, congressional hearings, civil suits from the contractors whose businesses you destroyed. This will consume years of your life. I don't care, Claire said, as long as those soldiers get justice. Some of them won't. Some cases are too old evidence, too degraded witnesses, too compromised. Marks tucked his tablet under his arm. Justice is messy and incomplete, and it takes forever. I just want you to know that going in. He left with his assistants. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of Ryan's monitors. You don't have to do this, Ryan said quietly. You've done enough. We could both walk away, go into witness protection, start over somewhere quiet. Claire thought about it, thought about a small town somewhere, a new name, a simple job at a local clinic. No more looking over her shoulder, no more federal agents and congressional hearings and death threats. It sounded like paradise. It sounded like surrender. No, she said. I'm seeing this through, all of it. Ryan smiled. Yeah, I figured you'd say that. Over the next 3 days, Claire lived in the hospital. She slept in a chair beside Ryan's bed, ate vending machine food, and gave preliminary statements to what felt like every law enforcement agency in the federal government. FBI, DOD, Inspector General, congressional investigators, the Justice Department's Public Integrity Section. They all wanted her story, wanted to verify details from her files, wanted to understand how deep the corruption ran. And it ran deep, deeper than Claire had imagined. On the 4th day, Agent Reese brought her to a secure facility in Quantico for a full debriefing. They sat in a windowless room while Claire walked through everything she'd witnessed at Bagram. The supply shipments that never matched manifests. The surgical equipment stamped with one manufacturer's logo, but clearly produced by another. The pharmaceutical supplies that arrived expired or diluted or simply replaced with saline and sugar pills. How did you figure out the shell company structure? Asked Jennifer Wu, a forensic accountant who'd been brought in to trace the money. I didn't, not completely, but I noticed the same names kept appearing on different contracts. Different company names, same individuals listed as officers. I started cross-referencing in corporation documents, found patterns. Claire pulled up a chart she'd created years ago, preserved in her encrypted files. See here, this company, Med Supply Solutions International, shares an address with Tactical Medical Resources, which shares board members with Global Health Logistics. All three were billing the military for the same shipments. Wu studied the chart, her eyes widening. This is extraordinary work. You did this alone. I had help from a supply sergeant who noticed the same discrepancies I did. Staff Sergeant Marcus Johnson. Claire's voice caught. He died 3 weeks after he started asking questions about the contracts. Official cause was listed as bacterial infection from a combat injury. But the antibiotics that could have saved him were in the shipment that never arrived. The room went silent. Wu looked at her colleagues, then back at Claire. You think he was killed deliberately? I think his death was convenient. And I think if I'd spoken up sooner, if I'd gone to the Inspector General right away instead of waiting, collecting more evidence, he might still be alive. Reese leaned forward. Claire, you can't blame yourself for, why not? I stayed quiet because I was scared. Scared of what would happen to my career, my family, my life. And while I was being scared, people died. She met their eyes unflinching. So yes, I blame myself. And that's why I'm going to testify at every hearing site, for every deposition, cooperate with every investigation until every single person responsible faces consequences. They worked through the night and into the next morning. By the time they finished, Claire had provided testimony linking Senator Hargrave to 17 different shell companies, 43 fraudulent contracts, and an estimated $230 million in stolen funds. When she finally left Quantico, dawn was breaking over the Potomac. Reese drove her back to the hospital where Ryan was being transferred from ICU to a regular room, a sign his condition was improving. Claire found him sitting up in bed, arguing with a physical therapist about when he could start walking. Your lung collapsed 4 days ago, the therapist was saying patiently. You need to take this slow. I need to get back to work. I've got cases piling up. Ryan, Claire's voice cut through his protest. Listen to her. He looked at her with all the exhaustion written across her face and deflated. Fine, but I want to be walking by next week. We'll see. The therapist made a note on her chart and left. Claire collapsed into the visitor's chair. You're impossible. I'm motivated. There's a difference. Ryan shifted, trying to get comfortable. How'd the debriefing go? Long, detailed. They have enough now to prosecute everyone involved. She closed her eyes. Marks called while I was driving back. The Attorney General signed off on my immunity deal. Full protection for everything I did. Good. That's good. A pause. Claire, when this is over, when all the trials are done, what are you going to do? She hadn't let herself think that far ahead, or hadn't allowed herself to imagine a future beyond testimony and investigations and justice. I don't know. Go back to nursing, maybe. Find a hospital that will hire someone who's been all over the news. You could do more than that. Consult with the Inspector General's office, train investigators to spot fraud, help reform the procurement system so this can't happen again. I'm not a policy expert, Ryan. I'm a nurse who got lucky documenting evidence. You're a hero who saved lives by exposing corruption. Don't diminish that. Before Claire could respond, her phone rang. Unknown number. She'd learned to hate unknown numbers. Ms. Ashford, this is Captain Jennifer Morrison, Army Criminal Investigation Command. We've been reviewing your files and we've identified several current service members who may have been involved in the procurement fraud. We need you to come to Fort Belvoir tomorrow to make formal identifications. Claire's hand tightened on the phone. Current service members, you mean people still in uniform? Yes, ma'am, including 2 officers currently stationed at the Pentagon. Morrison's voice was grim. This goes higher than we thought. Higher, of course it did. Claire had exposed one senator and his network of contractors, but corruption didn't exist in isolation. There were always more people, more schemes, more layers to peel back. I'll be there, Claire said. She hung up and looked at Ryan, who'd clearly heard enough to understand. Pentagon officers, at least 2, probably more. Claire rubbed her face. This isn't going to end, is it? Every thread we pull reveals 10 more. That's how corruption works. It metastasizes. Ryan reached for her hand. But you don't have to take all of it on yourself. Let the investigators do their jobs. You've given them everything they need. Have I? Because it feels like I'm just getting started. The next morning, Claire drove to Fort Belvoir with Agent Torres providing escort. The Army CID office was austere and professional, dominated by a conference table covered in photographs and documents. Captain Morrison was in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She gestured to the photos. These are individuals we've identified from your files as potentially involved. I need you to tell me which ones you can personally verify participated in the fraud. Claire studied the photos. Some faces she recognized immediately. Others were vaguer people she'd seen around Bagram, but never interacted with directly. She pointed to a man in dress blues ribbons covering his chest. Colonel Marcus Brennan. He was the contracting officer who approved most of the fraudulent purchases. I saw him meeting with representatives from the shell companies, saw him sign off on deliveries that never happened. She moved to the next photo. Major Sarah Lindstrom. She was in charge of medical supply distribution. She falsified inventory reports to cover the missing shipments. Morrison was taking notes. Can you testify to this in a court-martial? Yes, I have documentation, photos, recordings of conversations. Clare hesitated. But Colonel Brennan is well connected. He has friends in the Joint Chiefs. Coming after him means going after the entire Army procurement system. Good. Morrison's smile was predatory. It's about time someone did. They worked through 23 photos. By the end, Clare had identified 17 current service members involved in the fraud, ranging from lieutenants to a 2-star general. This is going to cause an earthquake, Torres said quietly as they left Fort Belvoir. She was right. Within 48 hours, the Army announced a sweeping investigation into procurement fraud. 6 officers were placed on administrative leave. The Secretary of the Army gave a press conference promising accountability and reform. And the threats started. The first one came via email sent to Clare's old hospital account. Simple and direct. Stop talking or die. The second was a dead rat left on the doorstep of her apartment, a note tied around its neck. Snitches end up in ditches. The third was a phone call to Ryan's hospital room, a digitally distorted voice telling him that his sister's crusade would get them both killed. Agent Santos moved Clare to a safe house in Northern Virginia, a nondescript townhouse with armed guards and security cameras covering every angle. Ryan, still recovering, was transferred to a military hospital where security was tighter. This is what we expected, Reese told Clare on her second night in the safe house. Hargrave's network is desperate. They're trying to scare you into silence. It's working, Clare admitted. She stood at the window watching the street through a gap in the curtains. I can't live like this looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. You won't have to. Once the trials start, once people start going to prison, the threat level drops. They'll realize intimidation doesn't work, and they'll focus on their legal defense instead. Or they'll decide I'm too dangerous to leave alive and eliminate the threat permanently. Reese didn't have an answer for that because they both knew it was possible. People had been killed for exposing far less than Clare had. That night, Clare couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Staff Sergeant Johnson, about how he'd noticed the same fraud she had and started asking questions, about how he'd died alone in a hospital bed from an infection that shouldn't have killed him. She'd told herself for years that staying silent kept her alive, but Johnson had died anyway, and so had Private Chen and Specialist Rodriguez and Agent Wright and how many others whose names she didn't know. Silence hadn't protected anyone. It had just let the corruption fester. Around 3 a.m., Clare heard something outside. A scraping sound, metal on metal. She sat up, reaching for her phone to call the guards. The power went out. Complete darkness. The hum of the refrigerator dyeing the glow of the streetlight outside vanishing. Clare's heart hammered as she fumbled for her phone, but the screen stayed dark. Dead battery. She'd forgotten to charge it. Footsteps on the stairs. Multiple people moving quietly, but not quietly enough. Clare rolled out of bed, moved silently to the bedroom door. She locked it, knowing it wouldn't stop anyone determined, but it might buy her seconds. She grabbed the lamp from the nightstand, pulled the cord free, held it like a club. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs, paused outside her door. Then the door exploded inward, the lock shattering. 3 figures in tactical gear rushed in. Clare swung the lamp at the first one, connected with his head. He went down hard. The second grabbed her arm, twisted it behind her back. Clare drove her heel into his instep, broke free, ran for the window. If she could get it open, scream for help, the neighbors might. Arms wrapped around her waist lifted her off her feet. She thrashed, fighting with everything she had, but there were too many of them. Something pressed against her neck, a needle. The world went fuzzy. Clare's limbs stopped obeying her commands. She heard voices muffled and distant. Package secured, moving to extraction point. What about the guards? Handled. Let's move. They carried her down the stairs, out into the night. Clare tried to fight the drug pulling her under, tried to stay conscious, but it was like drowning in cotton. Her vision tunneled darkness, creeping in from the edges. The last thing she saw before everything went black was a black van, its door sliding open, someone inside reaching for her. When Clare woke, she was sitting in a chair in a concrete room. Her hands were zip-tied to the armrests. Her head pounded and her mouth tasted like chemicals. A man sat across from her, backlit, so she couldn't see his face clearly. but his voice was familiar. Ms. Ashford, I apologize for the dramatic extraction, but you left us no choice. Claire's vision cleared enough to make out his features. Colonel Marcus Brennan, the contracting officer she'd identified just days ago. Where am I? Her voice was rough, dry. Somewhere your FBI friends won't find you. Somewhere we can have an honest conversation about your future. Brennan leaned forward, or lack thereof. You're already under investigation. Killing me won't stop that. No, but it will send a message to anyone else thinking about cooperating with investigators. And it will ensure you can't testify at my court-martial. He pulled out a pistol, checked the chamber casually. Nothing personal, Ms. Ashford. You're collateral damage in a much larger game. Claire's mind raced. She was tied up, unarmed, drugged, and about to be executed by a decorated Army colonel. No rescue coming, no last-minute save. She had one card left to play. I recorded everything, she said. Every conversation at Fort Belvoir, every identification I made, every piece of testimony. It's set to upload automatically if I don't check in every 6 hours. Kill me and you just guarantee your conviction. Brennan's expression didn't change. You're lying. You want to take that chance? Claire forced herself to meet his eyes. I've been 3 steps ahead of people like you since Afghanistan. You really think I'd walk into Fort Belvoir without insurance? For a long moment, Brennan just stared at her. Then he stood, walked to the door, spoke to someone outside. Claire couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw his body language shift from confident to uncertain. He came back inside. My tech people are checking your claim. If you're telling the truth, we'll discuss terms. If you're lying, that you'll die very slowly instead of quickly. Either way, you're not leaving here. He left. Claire sat alone in the concrete room, listening to her own heartbeat thunder in her ears. She'd lied. There was no automatic upload, no dead man switch this time. She'd been so focused on getting Ryan protected and cooperating with investigators that she'd forgotten to set up new fail-safes. Stupid. Fatal mistake. Time crawled past. Claire tested the zip ties, found them tight and professionally applied. She tried to stand, but the chair was bolted to the floor. Tried to tip it over, couldn't get enough momentum. The door opened. Brennan returned, his expression dark. You lied. Yeah, I did. No point denying it now. He raised the pistol. Any last words? Claire thought of Ryan recovering in a hospital bed. Thought of Agent Wright dying on a parking garage floor. Thought of all the soldiers whose names she'd documented, whose deaths mattered, even though the system had tried to erase them. You're going to lose, she said quietly. Maybe not today, maybe not because of me, but someone else will come forward. Someone always does. And eventually you'll all pay for what you did. Brennan's finger moved to the trigger. The door exploded inward. Armed figures poured into the room, red laser sights painting Brennan's chest. He froze. Drop the weapon. Drop it now. Brennan's gun clattered to the floor. The tactical team swarmed him, forced him face down, cuffed him. Someone cut Claire's zip ties. Her hands were numb, blood rushing back into her fingers in painful tingles. Agent Reese appeared, pulling her to her feet. You okay? How did you find me? GPS tracker in your safe house mattress. We've been following you since they took you. He supported her as they walked out. The guards are okay, by the way. Tased but alive. We got here as fast as we could. Outside, dawn was breaking over what looked like an abandoned warehouse complex. FBI vehicles surrounded the building. Brennan was being loaded into one, still shouting about lawyers and illegal searches. Claire watched him go, feeling nothing but exhaustion. It never ends, she said. We arrest Hargrave, Brennan steps up. We arrest Brennan, someone else will take his place. It's endless. Maybe, Reese admitted, but each arrest makes the next one easier. Each conviction sends a message. Eventually, the cost of corruption gets too high and people stop trying. He guided her toward a waiting ambulance. You need to be checked out. That drug they use can have after effects. I need to see Ryan. Tell him I'm alive. Already done. Called him before we breached. He knows you're safe. The paramedics wanted to take her to the hospital, but Claire refused. She'd had enough of hospitals. Instead, they cleared her at the scene, and Reese drove her straight to the military hospital where Ryan was staying. He was waiting in the lobby when they arrived, leaning on a walker, his face pale but determined. When he saw her, relief crashed over his features so strongly he nearly collapsed. Claire caught him, helped him stay upright. They held each other, two broken people who'd survived because they'd refused to give up. No more safe houses, Ryan said into her ears. No more splitting up. From now on, we stick together. Agreed. And for the first time since this nightmare started, Claire felt something that might have been hope. They moved Ryan to a secure wing of Walter Reed Medical Center that same afternoon. Claire refused to leave his side, sleeping in a recliner chair that made her back ache and eating whatever the nurses brought on meal trays. Reese posted agents outside the door, two at all times, rotating shifts every 8 hours. On the third day, Deputy Attorney General Marks returned with a woman Claire didn't recognize. She was in her 60s, wearing a tailored suit and carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Claire's entire wardrobe. Ms. Ashford, Mr. Ashford, this is Attorney General Patricia Henley. Marks gestured to the woman. She wanted to speak with you personally, the Attorney General herself. Claire stood suddenly aware of her wrinkled clothes and unwashed hair. Ryan tried to sit up straight in terror in bed, winced at the pain in his chest. Henley waved them both down. Please stay comfortable. I'm not here for formalities. She pulled up a chair, sat with her briefcase balanced on her knees. I've spent the last 72 hours reviewing every file you provided, Ms. Ashford. Every document, every photo, every piece of testimony. Do you know what I found? Claire shook her head. The most comprehensive documentation of military procurement fraud in the history of the Department of Defense. You've handed us cases that will take years to prosecute fully. Decades, probably. Henley opened her briefcase, pulled out a folder. Senator Hargrave is cooperating now, trying to reduce his sentence by providing information on his co-conspirators. He's named 47 individuals so far, contractors, military officers, DoD civilians, even 2 sitting congressmen. Good, Claire said. They should all face justice. They will, but here's the problem. Henley set the folder on Ryan's bed. The sheer scale of this corruption means we need someone to coordinate all these prosecutions. Someone who understands the evidence intimately, someone who can't be bought or intimidated, someone the public trusts. She looked at Ryan. We want you to lead the task force. Ryan blinked. I'm a federal prosecutor, not a task force commander. And I just got shot. I can barely walk. You'll have time to recover. We're talking about a multi-year effort, and you're exactly the person we need. Your record is spotless, your reputation is unimpeachable, and you have personal investment in seeing this through. Henley's gaze shifted to Claire. As for you, Ms. Ashford, we'd like you to serve as a special consultant. Work with our investigators, help them understand the procurement process, identify fraud patterns in other military contracts. Claire's first instinct was to refuse. She was a nurse, not an investigator. But then she thought about Johnson and Chen and Rodriguez, about all the soldiers who died because she'd stayed silent for so long. What about my nursing license, my job at the hospital? You'll keep your license. As for your job, the hospital's already indicated they'd welcome you back whenever you're ready. But this would be full-time work for at least the next 2 years. You'd have to choose. Henley smoothed her skirt. Think about it. Both of you. We need your answer by the end of the week. She left with Marks trailing behind. Claire and Ryan sat in silence for a long moment. You want to do it? Ryan finally said. It wasn't a question. I don't know. Part of me wants to go back to the ER, back to saving lives instead of destroying them. You haven't destroyed any lives. You've held people accountable for destroying other people's lives. There's a difference. Is there? Because I keep thinking about all the families affected by these prosecutions, wives and kids who will watch their husbands and fathers go to prison. Ryan shifted in bed, trying to get comfortable. Those men made choices. They chose money over integrity. They chose to steal from soldiers who were bleeding and dying. Their families are victims too, but not because of you. Claire moved to the window, looked out at the parking lot below. Security was tight guards at every entrance, barriers preventing vehicle access, all because of what she'd exposed. What if we can't win? What if Hargrave's lawyers find a technicality, get the evidence thrown out, and he walks free? Then we try again. We build another case. We don't stop until we win. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's just necessary. Ryan's voice was firm despite his weakness. Claire, you've spent years carrying the weight of what you witnessed. Let someone else help carry it now. You don't have to do this alone anymore. Before Claire could respond, her phone rang. Reese's number. Turn on the news. Any channel. Claire grabbed the remote, flipped to CNN. The breaking news banner made her stomach drop. Senator Hargrave found dead in federal custody. Apparent suicide. The anchor was reading details. Hargrave had been discovered in his cell at the federal detention center, hanging from a bedsheet tied to the air vent. Guards had attempted CPR, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. No, Claire whispered. No, no, no. Ryan was watching the same broadcast, his face pale. He was our star witness. Without his testimony, we still have the documents, Claire said, but her voice lacked conviction. We still have everything I collected. Her phone rang again. It's Santos this time. Are you watching the news? Yeah, please tell me this is actually a suicide and not a hit made to look like one. We don't know yet. The cell was under video surveillance, but the camera malfunctioned 40 minutes before Hargrave was found. Could be coincidence. Could be something else. Santos lowered her voice. But Claire, there's something you need to know. Hargrave left a note. It was addressed to you. Claire's grip tightened on the phone. What did it say? I'm sending you a photo of it now. Fair warning, it's not pleasant. The message came through seconds later. Claire opened it, read the handwritten words. Ms. Ashford, you were right. The corruption runs deeper than either of us imagined. I was a fool to think I controlled it. They controlled me, and now they've controlled my death too. Watch your back. Trust no one. They're closer than you think. P.H. He was murdered, Claire said flatly. Someone got to him in federal custody and made it look like suicide. We're investigating that possibility, Santos said carefully. But Claire, you need to understand what this means. If they can reach Hargrave in a federal detention center, they can reach anyone, including you. I know. We're moving you and Ryan to a military installation. Fort Meade NSA headquarters. It's the most secure facility in the country. You'll be safe there while we sign. No, Claire cut her off. I'm done hiding, done running. If they want me dead, they'll have to do it in broad daylight where everyone can see. That's not a strategy, that's suicide. It's the only move I have left. As long as I'm in hiding, I'm invisible. I can disappear, and no one would notice. But if I'm public, if I'm testifying at hearings and giving interviews and making myself impossible to ignore, killing me becomes too risky. The spotlight is my protection. Santos was quiet for a moment. You're probably right, but I still don't like it. You don't have to like it. You just have to keep me alive long enough to testify. Claire hung up, turned to Ryan. I'm taking the job, the consultant position with the task force, and I'm doing it publicly. Claire, they killed Hargrave because he was going to name names, so I'll name them instead. Every person involved, every contract that was fraudulent, every dollar that was stolen. I'll make it all public before they can silence me. Ryan studied her face, seeing the determination there. Okay, then I'm taking the task force leadership position. We do this together. You sure you can barely stand? I'll learn to stand again. I'll do whatever it takes. He reached for her hand. We end this. All of it. The press conference was scheduled for 3 days later. The Attorney General's office wanted time to prepare to coordinate messaging to ensure security was airtight. Claire spent those 3 days giving more depositions, working with forensic accountants to trace the stolen money, identifying additional suspects from photos and documents. On the morning of the press conference, Agent Torres helped Claire get ready. They'd moved to a suite at a hotel near the Justice Department, easier to secure than a hospital. Claire put on a navy blue suit that Torres had purchased for her, nothing fancy but professional. You look good, Torres said. Nervous. Terrified. Claire's hands were shaking as she tried to button her jacket. I'm about to stand in front of cameras and paint a target on my back. You already have a target on your back. Now you're just acknowledging it publicly. Torres finished the buttons for her. For what it's worth, I think you are incredibly brave. Brave or stupid? Sometimes they're the same thing. Ryan arrived from Walter Reed in a wheelchair, still too weak to stand for long periods, but determined to be present. They rode to the Justice Department together in an armored SUV, surrounded by a motorcade that felt excessive, until Claire remembered Hargrave dying in federal custody. The press room was packed. Every major news outlet, dozens of reporters, cameras everywhere. Claire felt her breath quicken, her chest tightening with anxiety. Ryan must have sensed it because he reached over and squeezed her hand. You can do this. I don't have a choice. Attorney General Henley took the podium first, laying out the broad strokes of the investigation. 17 arrests so far, 43 more suspects under investigation, an estimated $230 million in fraudulent contracts, ongoing reviews of every military procurement contract signed in the last decade. Then she called Clare to the podium. Clare walked up on legs that felt like water. The microphone was positioned too high, so someone adjusted it. The lights were blinding. She gripped the edges of the podium, took a breath. My name is Clare Ashford. 7 years ago, I was a combat medic stationed at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. My job was to save lives, but I watched soldiers die from preventable causes. Infections that should have responded to antibiotics. Bleeding that should have been stopped with proper surgical equipment. Injuries that should have been survivable with adequate medical supplies. Her voice was shaking, but she pushed through. I started documenting what I was seeing. Supply shipments that didn't match manifests. Equipment that was defective or expired. Contracts that were billing the government for deliveries that never happened. What I found was systematic fraud that spanned years and cost lives. She paused, looking out at the crowd of reporters. Some were taking notes frantically. Others just stared riveted. I stayed silent for a long time. I was afraid of what would happen if I came forward. Afraid of retaliation, afraid of not being believed, afraid of the consequences. And because I stayed silent, more people died. That's something I have to live with for the rest of my life. Clare's throat was tight, but she forced the words out. Senator Paul Hargrave orchestrated this fraud, but he didn't act alone. There are dozens of people involved. Military officers, defense contractors, government officials. Some of them are still in positions of power. Some of them are still stealing from the soldiers they're supposed to be supporting. Her hands were gripping the podium so hard her knuckles were white. I'm here today to say that I will cooperate fully with every investigation. I will testify at every hearing. I will name every name and provide every piece of evidence until everyone responsible faces justice. And to the people who think they can intimidate me into silence or make me disappear like they did Senator Hargrave, I want you to know that I'm not afraid anymore. You've already taken everything from me. My privacy, my safety, my quiet life. The only thing I have left is the truth, and I'm not letting go of it. The room erupted with the questions, reporters shouting, cameras flashing. Clare stepped back from the podium, her legs shaking. Henley took over fielding questions while security ushered Clare out a side door. In the hallway, Clare collapsed against the wall, sliding down to sit on the floor. Ryan wheeled over, concern written across his face. You okay? I just declared war on some of the most powerful people in Washington. I'm the opposite of okay. But even as she said it, Clare felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, would probably always be there. But it was mixed with something else now. Relief, purpose. The sense that she was finally doing the right thing. Torres appeared with a bottle of water. That was one hell of a speech. Twitter's already exploding. You're trending nationwide. Great, that makes me feel so much safer. Actually, it kind of does. You're too visible now to disappear quietly. They'd have to be insane to come after you. They've been insane this whole time. Why would they stop now? As if on cue, Clare's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You just signed your death warrant. She showed it to Torres, who immediately called it in. Within minutes, FBI Cybercrimes was tracing the message. It came from a burner phone that had been destroyed immediately after sending. Professional, Torres noted. They know what they're doing. Comforting. They moved Clare and Ryan to Fort Meade that evening despite Clare's protests. The base was locked down tight, access controlled surveillance everywhere. Their quarters were in a secure building used for witness protection, comfortable but impersonal. Over the next 2 weeks, Clare gave testimony to 4 different grand juries. The indictments started flowing. Colonel Brennan was charged with fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Major Lindstrom faced similar charges. 3 defense contractors were arrested. 2 congressmen resigned rather than face investigation. And the death threats kept coming. Emails, texts, letters mailed to the Justice Department. Most were generic angry citizens who thought Clare was a traitor for exposing military corruption. But some were specific, detailed, clearly written by people with inside knowledge. We know where your mother lives. We know she remarried and moved to Florida. Would be a shame if something happened to her. Claire hadn't spoken to her mother in 5 years. Not since Bill Hendricks had made a pass at her during Christmas dinner, and her mother had taken his side. But the thought of her being targeted because of Claire's actions made her sick. She called her mother that night. The conversation was awkward, stilted. "Claire, there's something wrong. I need you to be careful. There are people who might try to use you to get to me." "Use me? What are you talking about?" Her mother's voice was confused, slightly annoyed. Claire explained as simply as she could. "The fraud investigation, the threats, the danger." Her mother listened in silence. "So because you decided to make yourself famous, I'm in danger." "I decided to do the right thing. There's a difference. The right thing would have been keeping your head down and not making enemies of powerful people." Her mother sighed. "You always were stubborn, even as a child. Never knew when to leave well enough alone." Claire felt the familiar sting of her mother's disapproval. "I'm sending FBI agents to watch your house. They'll keep you safe." "I don't need FBI agents. Bill has guns. We can protect ourselves." "Mom, please, just let them help." "Fine, but I don't like this, Claire. I don't like any of it." She hung up without saying goodbye. Claire sat there holding the phone, feeling the weight of every relationship her choices had damaged or destroyed. Ryan found her an hour later, still sitting in the dark. He was walking now, slowly but steadily, physical therapy helping him regain strength. "Talk to Mom," he asked, lowering himself carefully into the chair across from her. "How'd you know?" "You get this look on your face after dealing with her, like you've been emotionally gut-punched." He leaned forward. "She said something awful, didn't she?" "She blamed me for putting her in danger. Said I should have kept my head down." "Of course she did, because accepting that her daughter did something heroic would require her to acknowledge her own moral cowardice." Ryan's voice was bitter. "She's been choosing convenience over integrity her whole life. It's why she married Bill after Dad died. It's why she took his side when he hit on you. It's why she'll never understand what you're doing now." Claire wiped at her eyes. "I keep thinking about Dad, about what he would say if he could see us now. He'd be proud. He'd tell you that doing the right thing is always hard, but it's still right." "How do you know?" "Because that's what he told me the night before he died. We were sitting on the back porch and he was talking about his job at the State Department, about how he'd seen corruption and looked the other way because fighting it seemed impossible. He said it was his biggest regret." Ryan's voice was thick with emotion. "He made me promise that if I ever saw something wrong, I wouldn't be like him. I'd stand up and fight even if it cost me everything." "You never told me that." "I was 12. I didn't really understand what he meant until now." Ryan met her eyes. "You kept that promise for both of us, Claire. You stood up and fought, and I'm going to make sure it wasn't for nothing." The first trial started 6 weeks after Claire's press conference. United States versus Marcus Brennan. The courtroom was packed with media, military brass watching to see how their own would be held accountable, and families of soldiers who died from the fraud. Claire testified for 3 days straight. She walked the jury through every document, every discrepancy, every piece of evidence linking Brennan to the fraudulent contracts. The defense tried to discredit her, painting her as a disgruntled veteran with an axe to grind. "Isn't it true, Ms. Ashford, that you were passed over for promotion while serving at Bagram?" The defense attorney was a shark in an expensive suit. "I was never up for promotion. I was enlisted, not an officer." "But you resented the officers, didn't you?" "Resented their authority. I resented officers who stole from soldiers. There's a difference. You're bitter about your military service. I'm angry about what I witnessed. If that makes me bitter, so be it." The defense couldn't shake her testimony because it was backed by thousands of pages of documentation. When Claire finally stepped down from the witness stand, she felt emptied out, but also lighter somehow. The jury deliberated for 18 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty. Brennan's face went white. His lawyers immediately called for appeals, but the damage was done. The first domino had fallen. Over the next 8 months, 12 more trials concluded. 11 convictions, 1 acquittal on a technicality. Major Lindstrom got 15 years. 3 contractors got sentences ranging from 10 to 20 years. The 2 congressmen who'd resigned were indicted and facing trial. And Claire testified at all of them. Her face became nationally recognized. People stopped her on the street to thank her or curse her, depending on their politics. Security remained tight, but gradually as the convictions piled up, the death threats decreased. Ryan threw himself into leading the task force. He still walked with a slight limp and couldn't raise his left arm above shoulder height, but his mind was sharp as ever. He coordinated prosecutions across multiple jurisdictions, worked with military investigators to identify additional fraud in other areas, and became a national figure in the fight against corruption. A year after Clare's initial press conference, they were both invited to testify before Congress about reforming military procurement. Clare sat at a long table facing the House Armed Services Committee cameras, recording every word. Ms. Ashford, the committee chair began, "You've been instrumental in exposing systematic fraud that cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars and cost soldiers their lives. Based on your experience, what reforms would you recommend?" Clare had prepared for this. She'd spent weeks working with policy experts, learning the procurement system inside and out, understanding where the vulnerabilities were. Transparency, she said simply. Every contract should be publicly available. Every shipment should be tracked with GPS and blockchain technology. Every dollar should be traceable from appropriation to delivery. And there should be independent oversight, not just internal military review. That would be extraordinarily expensive. It's cheaper than fraud, and it's definitely cheaper than losing soldiers because supplies never reach them. Clare leaned forward. The current system relies on people being honest. We need a system that doesn't require honesty because dishonesty is impossible. Make everything visible and fraud becomes much harder to hide. The committee members asked questions for 3 hours. By the end, 2 of them had committed to drafting reform legislation. It wasn't a guarantee of change, but it was a start. Walking out of the Capitol building, Clare felt Ryan's hand on her shoulder. "You did good in there. We'll see if anything actually changes." "It will. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. You've started something that can't be stopped now." That night, they had dinner at a small restaurant in Georgetown. Just the 2 of them, agents at nearby tables, providing security, but giving them space. It was the first time in over a year they'd done something normal. "Do you ever regret it?" Ryan asked over pasta neither of them was really eating. Coming forward, exposing everything. Clare thought about it. Thought about her quiet life as an ER nurse, now impossible to return to. Thought about the threats, the trials, the constant security. Thought about Agent Wright dying to protect her and Hargrave dying to protect his secrets. "No," she said finally. "I regret staying silent as long as I did. But coming forward, that was the only choice I could live with. Even though it cost you everything, it didn't cost me everything. It cost me comfort and privacy and safety. But I gained something too. Purpose. The knowledge that I did everything I could to make things right." She met his eyes. "And I got you back. We're actually talking again, actually working together. We haven't done that since Dad died." Ryan's eyes were wet. "Yeah, that's worth something." 2 years after that grocery store confrontation that started everything, Clare stood at Arlington National Cemetery. She'd come to visit the graves of soldiers whose names she'd documented, soldiers who died from the fraud she'd exposed. Staff Sergeant Marcus Johnson's headstone was simple, just his name, rank, and dates of service. Clare placed flowers at the base, kneeling in the grass. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner," she said quietly. "I'm sorry it took me so long to find the courage you had." She touched the cold stone. "But I did it. We got them. Not all of them, probably never all of them. But enough. Enough that other soldiers won't die the way you did." She visited Private Chen's grave next, then Specialist Rodriguez's. Each time she left flowers and whispered apologies and promises. Promised that their deaths mattered, that justice had been served, that the system was changing because of what had happened to them. When she finished, she found Ryan waiting by the car. He'd visited Agent Wright's grave while she made her rounds. "You ready?" he asked. "Yeah, let's go home." Home was a townhouse in Alexandria, now purchased with the proceeds from a book deal Clare had signed. She'd written everything down, the whole story from Afghanistan to the trials. The publisher said it would be a bestseller. Clare didn't care about that. She just wanted the truth preserved, documented, impossible to erase. They drove back in comfortable silence. At the townhouse, Clare made coffee while Ryan worked on case files for the task force. So when the investigations were ongoing, would probably continue for another 5 years at least. But the pace had slowed, the urgency diminished. Clare's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her Pick up. Ms. Ashford, this is Captain Jennifer Morrison from Army CID. We met at Fort Belvoir. I remember. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Actually, something's very right. We just arrested Lieutenant General Howard Marks. He was the highest-ranking officer involved in the procurement fraud. We've been building the case for 18 months, and your testimony was crucial. Morrison's voice was warm with satisfaction. I wanted you to be one of the first to know. Claire sat down slowly. Lieutenant General Marks had been on her list from the beginning, but he'd been too well protected, too connected. Getting him had seemed impossible. You're sure the case will stick? We've got him cold. Bank records, communications, testimony from 3 co-conspirators. He's going to spend the rest of his life in Leavenworth. Morrison paused. None of this would have been possible without you, Ms. Ashford. You gave us the roadmap. We just followed it. They talked for a few more minutes before Claire hung up. She sat there holding the phone, letting the news sink in. Ryan looked up from his files. What happened? They arrested Marks, the general who authorized most of the fraudulent contracts. The one you said was untouchable? Yeah. Claire felt tears starting. They got him, Ryan. They actually got him. Ryan abandoned his files, came over and pulled her into a hug. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, while Claire cried. Not from sadness this time, but from relief from the release of years of carrying the weight alone. When she finally pulled back, Ryan was smiling. You did it. You actually did it. We did it. Together. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about that grocery store, about stopping a clerk from hurting 2 teenagers, about how one small act of standing up for what was right had cascaded into something so much larger. She thought about all the people who'd told her to stay quiet, to accept that corruption was just how things worked, to not rock the boat. She thought about how many times she'd almost listened to them. And she thought about the future, about soldiers who would receive proper medical care because the supplies would actually reach them now, about taxpayers whose money would be spent honestly, about a system that was slowly, painfully being reformed. Around 3 a.m., Claire got up and went to her office. She pulled out a file she'd kept locked away of photographs of soldiers she'd treated at Bagram. Young faces, some smiling, some serious, all of them trusting that their country would take care of them. She spread the photos across her desk, studying each face. These were the people she'd done it for. Not for fame or money or recognition. For them. So their sacrifices wouldn't be compounded by betrayal from the people supposed to support them. Claire gathered the photos, placed them back in the file, locked it away. Then she went back to bed and slept deeply for the first time in years. 3 months later, Claire stood in the Rose Garden at the White House. The president was awarding her the Presidential Medal of Freedom for her courage in exposing military corruption. Ryan stood beside her, also receiving the medal for his work leading the task force. The ceremony was brief. The president spoke about integrity and sacrifice and the importance of holding powerful people accountable. He placed the medal around Claire's neck, shook her hand, thanked her for her service. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Claire smiled politely and said nothing, letting the White House press secretary handle the media. Afterward, at a private reception, a general approached her. 4 stars on his shoulders, ribbons covering his chest. Claire tensed instinctively. Mrs. Ashford, I'm General Robert Chen, current Commanding General of Army Materiel Command. I oversee all military procurement now. He extended his hand. I wanted to thank you personally. Your work has forced us to completely overhaul how we do business. It's been painful but necessary. We're better for it. Claire shook his hand cautiously. Will the reforms last? If I have anything to say about it, yes. I've made it my mission to ensure what happened to you and those soldiers never happens again. His expression was serious. I can't change the past, but I can honor those who died by making sure their deaths led to something meaningful. That's all I ever wanted. General Chen nodded. Then we're on the same page. He saluted her, something that surprised Claire given she'd been enlisted and he was a 4-star general. Thank you for your service, Ms. Ashford. All of it. He walked away, leaving Claire standing there with tears in her eyes. Ryan appeared with 2 glasses of champagne. You okay? Better than okay. Claire took the glass, raised it. To doing the right thing even when it's terrifying. To doing the right thing, Ryan echoed. They clinked glasses and drank 2 people who'd survived because they'd refused to surrender, who'd fought back against impossible odds and somehow incredibly won. 6 years after Claire had stopped that clerk from hurting those teenagers, she walked into a college auditorium to give a guest lecture. The professor teaching military ethics had invited her to speak about whistleblowing and accountability. The auditorium was packed, mostly ROTC cadets and military science students, young faces looking at her with curiosity and respect. Claire stood at the podium, looked out at them, and took a breath. "I'm going to tell you something your instructors might not teach you. There will come a time in your military career when you'll see something wrong. Maybe it'll be small, maybe it'll be massive, and you'll have to decide whether to speak up or stay silent." She paused, meeting their eyes. Staying silent is easier. Staying silent protects your career, keeps you safe, lets you sleep at night without worrying about retaliation. But staying silent also means being complicit. It means letting the wrongdoing continue. It means betraying the oath you took to serve with honor. The students were riveted, hanging on every word. Speaking up is terrifying. You'll be threatened, attacked, isolated. People you trusted will turn on you. Your life will never be the same. But speaking up is also the only way to live with yourself. It's the only way to be true to the values you claim to believe in. Claire's voice strengthened. "I stayed silent for too long, and people died because of my silence. When I finally spoke up, it cost me everything I thought I wanted. But it gave me something more important. It gave me integrity. It gave me peace with myself, and it gave meaning to the sacrifices others made." She spoke for 90 minutes, answering questions, sharing stories, encouraging these young future officers to be better than the ones who'd come before. When it was over, several students approached her. One was a young woman, maybe 22, with serious eyes. "Ms. Ashford, I'm Cadet Sarah Miller. I just wanted to say thank you. My uncle died at Bagram from an infection that shouldn't have killed him. Reading about what you did, knowing someone fought for justice for him, it means everything to my family." Claire felt her throat tighten. "What was your uncle's name?" "Staff Sergeant Marcus Johnson." The world stopped. Claire stared at this young woman, seeing traces of Johnson in her features, the same determined set to her jaw. "He was a good man," Claire said quietly. "He tried to expose the fraud before I did. He was braver than me. He always said the military was about honor, about doing the right thing even when it was hard." Sarah's eyes were wet. "You proved he was right about that. You showed that honor still matters." They talked for another 20 minutes. Sarah told stories about her uncle, about how he'd inspired her to join ROTC, about how she wanted to serve with the same integrity he had. Claire listened, holding this connection to a man whose death had haunted her for years. When Sarah finally left, Claire sat down in the empty auditorium, overwhelmed. Ryan had been watching from the back of the room. He came down the aisle, sat beside her. "You okay?" "Johnson's niece." "That was his niece." Claire wiped at her eyes. "She's joining the military because of him, because of the values he believed in. Then he's still making a difference, still inspiring people to be better." Ryan put his arm around her shoulders. "Just like you are." They sat there in the quiet auditorium, two people who'd survived a war against corruption and come out scarred, but whole, broken, but stronger, forever changed, but finally at peace. Claire thought about that grocery store clerk, about how a single moment of choosing courage over convenience had changed everything. She thought about all the moments that followed each one, a choice between silence and truth, between safety and justice, between protecting herself and protecting others. And she knew with absolute certainty that she'd make the same choices again. Every single one of them. Because in the end, the only way to live with yourself was to stand up for what was right no matter the cost. And she had stood up when it mattered most. And because of that, soldiers would live who might have died, justice would prevail, where corruption had thrived and the truth would endure long after the lies had been forgotten.